Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 78 on this podcast. I have a guest today. It's been a while, a long time coming. We've been trying to arrange a meeting. We tried to do it in person. It didn't quite work out, but he's here virtually. His name is James Mack. I'm going to give him a short introduction before I ask him questions. He's a stand-up comedian. That's the main reason I got him here. But learning about his biography and what he told about himself, he is a very diverse person. He was in the Army. He worked for ESPN. He was a cop in Nevada. He has multiple different college degrees in not political science. And what are your college degrees again?
Yep. Political science, criminal justice, and I have an MBA.
Yeah, so very interesting, diverse background. So I have a lot of questions for him. I would imagine with all this background, he draws a lot of comedic inspiration. So before we get into it, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit like, and please leave a comment on anything I talk about with him throughout the session. I like to hear, the listeners' opinions about things. Okay, so I have a few questions from some listeners. The first question is from K Madden 462. He wants to know, he has a comedy question. I like this question. Does all comedy, in your opinion, come from a place of pain or trauma? What do you think about that?
No, I don't think all comedy has to, or that all comedy does. I have quite a few things that I talk about that just come from real life stories. They don't have to be, necessarily trematic or bad.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. What about in general? Like, would you say that overall, even if not every comedic idea or every comedic story is from a place of pain or trauma, would you say overall, like when you go to open mics and stuff like that, that most comedians seem to have had like a rough life? Do you think that's true or not so much?
I think if you look at comedy as a whole, then yeah, I think I would say based off of everything that I know about it, most comedians have something, that has, whether it's trauma or some type of mental illness or something that traumatic in their past or current mental state that drives them, Some of them have multiple things. You can have somebody who's depressed, alcoholism, drug use, sexual assaults. For me, mine is PTSD from combat. So, plus you could have somebody, was beat as a child, domestic violence, numerous things. So
yeah, I think I've talked about this a lot on the podcast before, and I do believe that comedy is a way to, because I read a lot of philosophy and like psychology books, and one concept I've been reading lately is that you're supposed to integrate your darkness, because rather than trying to get rid of it altogether, you find a way to find a productive place in your life for it. And I think that's what comedy does for a lot of these, people that have had these traumatic experiences. I think rather than being unable to completely get rid of this darkness that they've accumulated from their trauma, they find a way to like let it out in a safe and healthy way. And I think comedy is such a great way to let that out, in my opinion, because I agree with you. I'm sorry to hear about your, PTSD from your experiences in combat. I do have some questions for you about, that type of stuff later. But yeah, similar with me here too. I've had I struggle with mental illness and stuff like that. And I find that when I talk about it on stage, it's like, it just kind of, it makes it easier, makes it easier to deal with.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things, speaking about that, is now, so when I first started talking about my PTSD on stage, it was more of just an outlet of like, hey, this is my best way I know how to explain to people, like, this is what I'm dealing with. And now it's kind of changed to where it turns into almost educational.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of people think PTSD is one thing. They're like, oh, that's like just depression, or that's not. And so now I'm kind of using the comedy to explain that, no, PTSD is an umbrella term for a lot of different things that can fall under it. So,
yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to get more into the stuff about combat and stuff because I have questions later about that. But let me get to the next question from the listener first. So the next listener wants to know, is there anything, this is an interesting question. In your opinion, is there anything that should never be joked about? And if so, how do you determine that? So this is from G. Willikers. I'll repeat the question again. Is there anything that should never be joked about? If so, how do you determine?
I always say that there's nothing that should be off limits, but I think there are some things that you need a lot of skill and experience to address.
Yeah.
And that's regardless of whether it's you're talking about somebody else's situation or your own. Like I always tell, the one that always comes up is rape jokes. Obviously, sexual assault jokes, rape jokes. I've heard 3 comics that do it well. That's it, and that's only 4 jokes out of the 3 comics.
It's funny you say that because in my material, so my opinion on this, to answer the listener, is that I don't think any jokes are off limits in period for the world, but I think you have to be a certain person to be able to make that joke. So for example, I wouldn't feel comfortable making black jokes. Like I just like race it, you know what I mean? But I think if you were black and you wanted to make fun of your own culture, that would be acceptable. When it comes to the rape jokes, I have experienced, sexual assault in my life. So I actually do have material where I tried to like we were talking about before, talk about that stuff on stage as an outlet. In my opinion, I think that's okay. And my reaction from the audience has been mostly good reactions from that thing. Cause I think the listeners can tell the authenticity if like somebody's making fun of themselves versus making fun of other people. So that's kind of my take on that. I don't think racist jokes or jokes about traumatic experiences like rape are off limits if the person is joking about themselves. That's how I look at it.
Well, in the way I was referring, I'm sorry, I should have specified. I'm talking about somebody talking about it and it's not them as the subject of it. So that's usually where I'm referring to. That's what I was saying. I've only heard 4. I've been listening to comedy my whole life, know, and I've only heard 4 good ones that I'd be like, that's a good.
That's another thing too. I guess I would have to hear the joke as well in order to like really understand the full context of it. But like overall, my opinion would be like, it would be hard to pull off unless that was something that you had experienced, yourself.
That's what I was saying. For the most part, I usually tell people if it's not something you've personally experienced and you're just talking about it, like that's a high level, that's a high bar to try and jump across to do something that serious. If I can ask you one question, you talk about it on stage. Now with like my PTSD stuff, when I first started talking about it out in shows, I would have people come up to me and be like, "Hey man, I know some people you could talk to." Have you ever had that with either when you first started?
No, I actually haven't. To be honest, I have not. I've talked about like I used to have an eating disorder. I make jokes about that on stage. No one's ever. Maybe I seem like I have it together now. I don't always have it together now, but like maybe when I say it, they're getting it from a place of like, this is in the past. Like, I don't think when I say those jokes, they're not taking it as in like, I'm currently experiencing those things. So I've never had anybody come up to me and ask if like I needed help with anything, but that's interesting that you get that reaction. So when you say your jokes, do you kind of present them in a way that it's like, no, I'm still presently experiencing these symptoms, or do you kind of say it?
Well, that's the one thing with PTSD, it never goes away. So you just learn how to kind of mitigate the symptoms.
So if you don't, or is this a comfortable subject to talk about if I ask you questions about it, or do you want to skip it? So for, because I struggle with mental health stuff myself, so I'm kind of curious to see how it compares to PTSD. I experience things where like certain things from the past trigger me, and then my mind kind of relives that experience. Is that similar? Is that similar to what PTSD is?
Well, once again, PTSD is just the umbrella term. So, so that's where what's causing all the underlying symptoms is a previous traumatic stress, and you never quite get to the point where it's completely gone. But yeah, I have had like what you're referring to, like with triggers. For a lot of people, think of when they think of veterans, when they think of triggers, they think of flashbacks.
Gotcha.
Which that's essentially what that is something triggers you and you start reliving that moment.
Something in your, from my guess, it would be like something in your environment that reminds you of that experience. It could be something as simple as a color you've seen or like a sound you've heard. Or I might have PTSD myself then, because from traumatic things that happened when I was younger, I experienced this quite frequently, where like if I hear a name that reminds me of a name in the past, my whole body will start like feelings and emotions, and my brain can like I have I don't know if you experience this as well, but like I'll be in the middle of work or in the middle of conversations with people, and then I'll just kind of zone out, and they'll be like, Andrea, I'll be like, oh yeah, what? And I'll like come back to reality. I don't know if that's something you experience as well.
Well, they don't usually call me Andrea, but yeah.
What's that?
I said they don't usually call me Andrea, but
did I call you Andrea?
No, you were just saying Andrea.
Oh yeah. No.
All right, sorry.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. No, like my, I teach, and like my students will sometimes be like, Miss Andrea, are you there? And usually when that happens is like something in my environment like reminded me of something, and I just kind of zoned out for like a second, and it's a little frightening sometimes, you know.
Yeah, the last one actually just happened a couple weeks ago. So there is like certain smells will trigger me. And I was doing a show, and I won't say where, but it was in the city, and an Arabic guy walks by, which I've kind of gotten over. Like I can see them, and I'm like, whatever. But he had prayer oil on him. And that smell, because a lot of the suicide bombers would douse themselves in it. So you got used to that smell being a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because they were preparing to kill themselves. And like he did that, and instantly I like back up. I'm against the wall. I'm watching everybody's hands. Luckily, a friend of mine who I've explained, like, hey, if you ever see me doing this, I need to get snapped out of it.
Yeah.
And luckily he did it. And he's over there like pinching my arm, because you need some kind of something to snap you out of it, to bring you back to kind of reality, to realize, hey, nothing's wrong. You're fine.
It's crazy. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We really live like our minds are so powerful. Like it feels like when you experience stuff like this, because I've experienced similar things myself, probably not as severe as you know, because I've never been in combat, but I've experienced similar things myself. Like I was saying before, where I kind of zone out and I get lost in my own mind. It's like the mind is so powerful. When you're in that state of mind, it's hard to discern like what's real and what's in your head. It's like in a weird way, everything's in your head. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm kind of getting a little bit abstract here, but it's like we are living in our own minds all the time. And it's kind of like, I think for me, the frustrating thing is I feel like at this point in my life, I'm supposed to have control over where my mind goes. And I don't always. Like when things like that happen, like when those PTSD type things happen, it feels like it's out of my control, but it's also in my control also to like try my best to pull myself back to like the present moment. And that's, to me, that's like very intimidating. You know what I mean?
It takes a lot of practice. Your mind works like a muscle. You have to, that's the reason, like if you want to meditate or something like that, like when you first start doing it, you constantly drift off. And like, for instance, like I do meditations to kind of work on stuff like that. And if I don't meditate for a while, when I go back to doing it, it takes me forever to be able to like stay clear.
Yeah, man, that's some scary stuff. Everyone's been telling me that I should start meditating. And for some reason, I've been procrastinating on it. I think because I know I would be so bad at it, because I know I would be like checking my phone, or like I would have a hard time doing it. But I really should, like you said, it's like a way to train your mind to be able to control your mind, you know?
Yeah, and you never get complete control, because I mean, like for instance, that incident that happened. Luckily, I had somebody there, and it's not necessarily like shaking you out of it. It's just bringing you to the present of what's going on around you.
How when you get into those states of mind, how long do you kind of freeze there? Like how long do you kind of dissociate for?
If I don't have anybody around me, like I've had instances where I'm completely alone. I can zone out for like 20 minutes.
See, I don't know if I've ever zoned out for 20 minutes. For me, it would probably be like a few minutes, but that sounds rough, like especially if you're by yourself and you don't have anybody. But that's good that you communicate with the people around you that it's something that you experience. Has it ever happened on stage? Have you ever zoned out on stage?
No, I'm pretty good about I don't know. I've lucked out and like I've learned a bunch of things on stage to keep you in the present, like, constantly looking around, looking at people. So I'm always, when I'm on stage, I'm always scouring for lack of a better term, the audience, because I'm looking to see, did somebody not laugh at that joke, or did somebody laugh really hard, and can I keep them rolling, or other things. I'm looking for maybe something I can riff off of.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's kind of like the same thing as meditation. Comedy in a way is probably like training your mind to stay focused in the present, because it's like comedy's such an in the moment thing. Like it's so high energy, and like the feeling is I get nervous on stage. I don't know about you, but I get like very awake when I'm on stage. So I would imagine like for PTSD, it's probably helpful to be able to like force yourself to be there to handle the situation,
Yeah. When I first started, I used to get real amped up before I went on stage, and I found out that actually hurt me, because I would be my adrenaline would be so pumped that I couldn't really focus on the crowd. And now I try and just stay as calm as possible and just walk up there and treat it like I'm walking down the street.
So you don't, like, when you're saying when you first started, you used to get pumped up, you would intentionally try to pump yourself up, like you would try to like get in the zone. And now you like don't. Now you just kind of like treat it like nothing, kind of thing.
Yeah, because I go up. I want to go on stage as relaxed as possible, so that way, like, it make it kind of fluid. So
my problem is I can't help my like nervousness. Like I don't intentionally try to get amped up. Like I'm kind of like an anxious person to begin with, so I'm just filled with adrenaline when I go up there, and it usually comes like. One of my friends gave me feedback, and he was like, "You're like a female Woody Allen. You're just so neurotic." So like, It's kind of just become my stage presence at this point, because I wouldn't say like, I mean, I'm a fast talker for sure, but I wouldn't say I'm like that hyper in my everyday life. But when I'm up there, that's just like my character now. It's just like this neurotic maniac. All right, let's go on to the next question. So this question is not about comedy, and this is interesting. I'm just hearing things today about like water shortage okay, so Alex Dulesky, who's also a stand-up comedian from New Jersey, he wants to know if the supply chain were to collapse, where should we go look for food? So that's an interesting question. I don't know. I'm very like unaware of what's going on in society a lot of the times. So are you aware, if he's asking this question, is he currently talking about like a potential collapse of supply and food? Is that what he's referring to, or is it just hypothetical?
Well, there are things that are currently leading towards that, possibly. So one of the things that a lot of people didn't know is that the railroad crash that happened in East Palestine, Ohio. So a lot of those chemicals got into the underground water.
Yeah.
Well, that water leads to the Ohio River, which leads to the Mississippi. And the other problem you're going to have there is a lot of that water table also feeds the crops in Ohio.
Yeah.
Plus the cattle and things like that. Plus, when you had the I think it was like 2 weeks later, the same train company had a crash in Michigan. Well, it's right by the water table again. So now you have what's going on in Philadelphia.
I live near Philadelphia.
Yeah. So where they, I think right now they're still at you have to boil your water before you use it.
Yeah, it's funny. The reason I had to start like a little later today is because I had a band practice. I'm in a band, and the bass player in the band is from Philadelphia. Like he lives in Philadelphia, and he told me today about the water shortage and that like he's not supposed to drink his own water, and that he said he went to the grocery store and there was like completely sold out of bottled water in the grocery stores in Philadelphia. So it's kind of funny that he asked this question like and right when all that was happening, but yeah, no, that's well. So hypothetically, if we ever got in a situation so severe that, like, for foreign, political reasons, we couldn't get food, what would you? I mean, you said you have experience hunting, so I'm sure you would be pretty. I'm sure you would be okay.
Yeah, I'm a country boy, so I'm good. Yeah. There are deer, there are fish I will eat. So. But
do you think if, like, let's just say hypothetically, if we were actually in a situation where we had to only hunt or food, would there ever get to a point where there'd be a shortage? Because I don't know, since you're a hunter and you're a country boy, you might know more about like which animals are available. Would there ever be a shortage of deer after a certain point?
Yeah. So that'd be an issue, of course, because you're going to have the people that, that know how to hunt that are now going to they're going to quit worrying about how many tags they have and stuff like that to go hunt. And they're just going to start, killing off the animals because they can turn around and sell that meat and things like that for profit. And they're going to start doing that. And I know for a fact that'll happen. But the other thing that I can kind of lean on is, knowing what, how to forage, what berries to eat, what not to eat, mushrooms, stuff like that. So
yeah, no, that's kind of crazy to think about. Like, you would have to have a knowledge of, like, I would eat the poison. Like, I'm such an idiot. I would eat the poisonous berries. Like, so you said you're a country boy. That's probably good that you have some skills in that department. Like, you might know a little bit about nature, how to determine like what's not a poisonous berry and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of it's just kind of being taught by other people. Like, the same thing. Like, I know how to track animals, and that's something I learned growing up. Yeah. Like I know a lot of hunters up here, they like to use tree stands, and my grandpa would be like, why are you setting up an ambush for a deer? So, like, get down out of the tree and let's go. You're going to learn how to follow it.
Okay. So explain this to me. I've actually thought about, because I went through a phase where like I was vegan for a little bit, and then I went back to meat, and like I want to eat meat, but I also don't like the idea of factory farming. In theory, okay, I live outside of Philly. I live in like the South Jersey suburbs outside of Philly. If I wanted to hunt my own meat, like how would somebody near a city even do that? Like what would I do? And then what would I do with the meat? Would I bring a deer into my apartment? Like how would somebody like me, like if you were to explain to someone how this works, how would I start to do that?
I mean, you could bring it into your apartment. I mean, you can set a deer up, in your shower. Yeah. Not
like I like, is there laws like if you,
yes.
Yeah. Like,
so usually for hunting, like you have to take what's called a hunter's safety course. And also like if like, say for instance, like deer season's just, it ended not that long ago. But say it is in deer season. So what you do, you have to take the hunter safety course. You have to go get a hunter's license that says, hey, I know what I'm doing out there as far as the laws are concerned. I know I can't use a spotlight. I'm not going to try and, put corn out to lure the deer or anything like that. So you're not going to cheat basically and lure the deer over. But then you also get what's called tags. So literally you get told like, hey, this is how many of each type of deer or rabbit or whatever animal you're hunting. This is how many you can go and hunt. And this is how many you get. And you literally have to tag that animal.
Okay. So if I ever actually wanted to hunt, it's not like I could just like, I have to learn a lot in order to do something.
Because there's also, you have to know the different types of deer, which one's in season. You also, and I don't know if they teach it, because I pretty much came up and they were like, you're good. take the hunter safety course, which is basically, don't shoot at anything you're not supposed to. But they should be going over like how to pick up on some of the diseases that you'd be looking for too. Because there's all kinds of them out there that can be transferred over to a human if you eat the meat. So
that's interesting to think about too. Wow. So yeah, no, if I ever wanted to do that, I would have a whole lot to learn. It wouldn't be something I can just like jump right into. And then like where in New Jersey can you hunt? Like
you can hunt a lot of different places. There's a lot of like I used to live in Hunterdon County and you can hunt out there. So
I mean, it's got the name Hunterdon right in it. Maybe that's why they called it.
Yeah.
No, you're right. There is a lot of, now that I think about it, there is a lot of open space in New Jersey. And I wonder if there's like, again, going back to the law thing, I'm wondering if there's like designated areas that are are appropriate to hunt and stuff like that.
Yeah. You have to be so many yards away from the nearest house. And
because you want to accidentally, Yeah.
You don't want to miss the deer and shoot grandma. So.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you ever talk about hunting in your material?
I do. Mostly it's, so I have one joke that kind of talks about like me almost hitting deer, and everything. And, that's not the big premise of the joke, but I talk about it and I've done so many shows and it always leads to hunting. Although lately it's been weird because people are like, oh yeah, I've hit so many deer. And I'm like, you realize you're not supposed to be driving through the woods, right? So, you're cheating.
Yeah, no, I just thought of it because you like cracked a little joke about hitting grandma. And I'm like, that was funny. I'm like, you should just joke about hunting. But it looks like you already do. Okay. So on to the next question. Like I was saying in the introduction, I was really shocked by how diverse of a person you are. I'm just like, wait, he did this and that. So you worked for ESPN for 2 years. What did you do for ESPN?
So I worked on the production team. So I started out doing camera work. That is a weird way that I got into that. So the way I got into ESPN, and I covered college sports. That was my what I did. Is I actually went and applied to be the head of security for a AAA baseball team in Reno, Nevada. And while I was sitting there, I was the only one in a suit, the only one with like my resume ready to go. And the guy that was head of production there who still works for ESPN, like came over and looked at me and he was like, oh, he goes, can I see your resume? And I was like, sure. I didn't know who he was. I just handed him my resume. And he saw that I had taken and had experience in computer design, computer graphics. And he was like, huh. He's like, come here with me real quick. And I was like, but I have an interview. He goes, yeah, there's a couple people ahead of you. You're fine. Let's go. And he was just wanting me to design a little graphic for the board, for like the kiss cam and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I could do that real quick. And I figured it out and did it and popped it up on the board. He goes, how would you like to come work for me? And I went, okay. He goes, you get paid more. You don't have to wear the stupid outfits they do. He goes, and you don't get yelled at half as much. I'm like, sounds great. Let's do this.
That's odd. Do you know what that reminds me of? I just got in. Have you seen Seinfeld episodes and everything like that?
Yeah. I mean,
I just got into Seinfeld and there was like how George got to work for the Yankees. It was like, I mean, I'm like in the later seasons now, so I can't remember exactly how it was, but it kind of reminds me of that. He like had a random idea for the Yankees and he was like, hey, why don't you just work for me? You know what I mean? So that's fucking awesome. Did you get to meet like some athletes and stuff in that experience?
Oh yeah. I had, working 2 years for them, the way their schedule works, if you're on the production team, is unless you take an entire week off, this is how your week looks. You have 6 days of work. Because regardless of what season it is, you go out to that university and you're covering any sport they have that week.
Yeah.
So it could be wrestling, volleyball, soccer, whatever, swimming. So they set the week up for you to cover as much as you possibly can. And then my biggest thing was football. I'm a big college football fan. But yeah, I got to. And the other part too is, I mean, you show up for these games, all the athletes know who you are. And there were so many times that you'd show up because you're wearing the ESPN shirts, and they would come up. They were like, "Hey, man, we got a house party that's going to be happening. Why don't you come by?"
That's so awesome. You probably got to network and do a lot of really good things. Why did you leave the job? I feel like I would have wanted to stay there forever.
Because you're gone 6 days a week. So,
gotcha.
And so, so you're gone 6 days. You fly back in while they're trucking everything back, and you get 1 day to essentially wash clothes and pay bills and do whatever you got to do. And then get ready to go out again.
I can imagine that could be fun at first, but after a while that could be taxing, I'm sure.
Yeah, because you really can't have a relationship, or it's hard to like, your friends eventually are like, dude, you're never around. And
that's the thing about like doing the artist type of work. Right now, thankfully, I'm able to balance out, I have a boyfriend and I have some friendships, but because of like, I love what I do. But I do the podcasting and the music and the comedy and everything. And thankfully, music is a very collaborative thing. So I get to spend time with musicians and stuff. But there's been a lot of times in my life, like on the way to trying to build my artistic endeavors, where it gets lonely. Like a lot of people don't realize that part of it too. Is like when you're doing an awesome, career, it gets very lonely sometimes because you have to spend a lot of time by yourself. Even as a comedian, like, yes, you go to the open mics and you see your comedian friends, but most of the time you're just sitting down quiet, waiting to go up. It's not like constantly social. You know what I mean? Well,
even at the shows, like as you move up the links in the ladder, or the steps in the ladder, there's points where like everybody starts coming together, and then you slowly start drifting back apart. Because when you're all like, kind of just doing spots on shows, yeah, you can sit around, joke around and everything. But once you start getting to like feature or headline stuff, like you're pretty much like, you don't really know most of the people that you're around anymore. Yeah. I've been doing headline spots, 1 or 2 a month. Now I'm starting to get them a little bit more. And it's the same thing, like people that I've been friends with for a while in comedy. I might see them on a show every now and again, but for the most part, we don't get to perform together anymore.
Yeah. So it's kind of like starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah. And most of the other people you're on the show with don't know who you are. Yeah. Until finally somebody's like, well, hey, you haven't gone up yet. Yeah, I'm your headliner. They're like, oh, okay. So,
yeah, wow. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's hard sometimes to meet people in these types of things. Now, you said this in your bio, so I'm going to bring it up. I found this was interesting. You said you're 45 years old. Is that right?
Yeah.
You said you're 45 years old and you're using dating apps. How is that for you? Because like I was talking about this on my last podcast. At 30 years old, when I was using dating apps, I felt like I was too old for the game. Like that's how I felt when I was 30. So I'm wondering how you feel. Like, what is the dating app experience like for you?
I've had to kind of figure them out. And all the different ones that are out there. So there's got to be 100 easy. Because I mean, you have all the specialty ones, which I don't really mess with. But the other thing about it is being so close to New York City. So I'm only like a 15-minute drive in New Jersey from New York. I get a lot of matches in New York City, and it kind of my mindset's a little bit different where, I travel around all the time. I'm in, Brooklyn one day, Queens the next, the Bronx, the whatever. So it doesn't click in my head that some people don't date outside of like their little borough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes that makes me kind of like tilt my head a little bit. I'm like, really? They're like, oh yeah, you're not in Manhattan. Sorry. I'm like, so if I'd have been in Brooklyn, you just said the same thing. And they're like, yep. I'm like, what?
I think I get it. I think some people probably just want the convenience of like not having to travel. Like they probably just like, there's a million people right on my block. I'm not fucking going to Brooklyn. Like, you know what I mean? When I can go to Manhattan. So I kind of get that. I think as you travel a lot, it's probably different for you. But I think some people probably like, they don't want to go through that,
Yeah. And some of it's that, and then some of it's also, sometimes I tend to forget some of the the preconceived notions that people have about everything. Being from the South, being from Texas, being a military, stuff like that. Yeah.
What is that like for you? Because I'm sure because New York City is a very liberal area. I'm sure when they hear your accent and you're like, yeah, I hunt and I fish, they're probably like, oh my God, he's a Trumper. That's probably, do you get that reaction a lot?
Yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot. As a matter of fact, when I first moved up here, that was my opening joke is that, yes, I'm from Texas. No, I didn't vote for Trump. And I didn't. So just to clarify, so it wasn't just a joke. But no, you have to deal with a lot of that. And even in my comedy, I still address a lot of that up front. Hey, here's some things. I know what you're thinking, and I don't say I know what you're thinking, but, I address it up front and deal with it. For the same reason, I have to address my accent up front, and because I know if not, there's going to be people that are like, where is this dude from? But yeah, on the dating apps, you get to see, very interesting things. One of the things, obviously, I'm not trying after, me personally, I don't want to date anybody below 35, I guess. Try that 10-year range. So, just because by that point, we should be at least on the same wavelength for some stuff.
Yeah.
And hopefully both of us have gotten over a lot of the younger tendencies of stuff. Like me personally, obviously when I was younger, I didn't really date much, but had quite a few ladies. Yeah. Whereas,
yeah, no, I don't know if it's a female thing, but I kind of retired from that mentality, at a pretty young age. I feel like women, that's the classic thing. Women want commitment and young men want to kind of sleep around. So I think I went through a little hoe phase, I guess you could say, when I was young, very young, 19 or 20, because it was just exciting. You know what I mean? I'm young and, sex, but I think pretty quickly I went into I don't want to do that. I think I was 23 or 24 when I really wanted to find somebody,
Yeah. Well, see, my whole thing is I was engaged from 18 to 20. So.
Oh yeah, that's that's rough.
And when we broke that off, it was like releasing a pony from the stable into an open field. So I was like, oh, they're breathing. Let's go. But no, yeah. So hopefully they've gotten over a lot of those types of tendencies, because that's not something I want to deal with anymore. So. Yeah. I know you've mentioned this on I can't remember who it was you were talking to, but you had asked somebody about the one night stand thing and how they felt the next day. And it's the same thing. You wake up and you're like, man, look, I don't want to deal with this. So.
Yeah, no, I think women are more genetically prone to feeling attachment from those types of things. From what I understand, men, biologically, they're a little more wired to be able to kind of sleep around and not have feelings attached. It's just kind of our biology. But women, I think, I don't know exactly the science. If I had someone here to look it up for me, but everyone listening, they can Google it themselves later. But from what I understand, there's some type of hormone that women release after having sex that is meant to try to create a bond with the man they had sex with. So for me, I like I said, I realized at a pretty young age that sleeping around wasn't a good thing, because if I sleep around and I don't know very much about the guy, well, now I'm in love and I want this person to be the father of my children, and I don't even know who the fuck this you know what I mean? It's just a bad idea. It's not good for a woman. I know men, biologically they can get away with that a little more and it doesn't hurt them as much, but I'm sure even for men, I'm sure at a certain point it probably gets empty,
Yeah, and it really, that was the other part of the reason why I kind of quit doing that, is eventually you're, all it takes is, you reach out to a couple of them that, you've been hooking up with, and you get 4 or 5 that are like, hey, I'm dating, I'm engaged now or whatever. And you're like, dude, I'm sitting here by my damn self. This is bullshit. So
it's like if you play that game too long, it's like you can miss out at a certain point.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, let me move on to the next question.
Okay.
Okay, I have a few questions here. I'm trying to decide which one I want to pick. I'm big on criminal justice. Okay, so you said this in your bio, and I actually just didn't understand what it meant. So I thought this would be an interesting thing for you to explain to me and the listeners. It says, you said in your bio, I'm big on criminal justice reform and removing the thin blue line. So can you explain to me what the thin blue line is? Like, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, so that's a term used where basically cops will cover up for other cops.
Okay.
One of the so I was military police when I retired from the Army, which I never got to do any law enforcement in it, but there's still some of that where, you don't arrest another MP. So, and the same thing goes with regular cops for the most part is, hey, you can get out of this ticket. I won't write you this ticket. I won't arrest your family. I won't do this. Well, I'm not a fan of that. And I was lucky in the state of Nevada when I was out there. They will punish the cop for standing up for the thin blue line. So one of the things they do is, or they used to do, I hope they still do it, is the commander of the state patrol. You had to register all of your vehicles and your family's vehicles as owning by a law enforcement person. And if you pulled one of those people over, you had to write them a ticket. There was no choice in the matter. And here's why I say this, is I think if you're an officer of the law, whether it's a cop or a DA or a judge, you know better. Why aren't you setting the example for other people? And you should be the example for everybody else to look upon. Not saying, they're going to be perfect. I get it. You're like, everybody is going to kind of zone out and maybe speed or something like that, but it shouldn't be to the point to where, like, for instance, one of the stories I always tell people about how serious it was is I ended up almost arresting a California State Highway Patrolman because he used his lights to get through a red light in Nevada. So I was like, I was a couple cars behind him in an unmarked vehicle. And I was like, what's going on? I'm like, why is he turning on his lights? He's not in his state. So let me see what's going on. He pulls up to a McDonald's.
So when you said he used his lights, like he was in his cop car. Like he didn't, like I know some people have like lights on their regular car. So I have a question about that. Sometimes I see people in not cop cars. They're just like regular cars, but they have lights on top of them. Are those police in their regular cars? Like, what is that?
Those probably unmarked cars.
Okay. All right. So going back to what we were saying before. So you're saying a lot of these police, like they'll be in their cop cars and they'll kind of be pretending that there's a situation just to get ahead in the McDonald's line.
So like he was in a California Highway Patrol vehicle marked and everything. And he turned on his lights to get through the stoplight because he didn't want to wait. And so I turned mine on, got behind him and we're going, and he pulls into a McDonald's and shuts his lights off. And he gets out of his vehicle, starts walking out and said, "Hey dude, what are you doing, man?" I'm like, what's the emergency? And why are you coming to a McDonald's in my area running your lights? And he's like, "Oh, I'm meeting a friend for lunch." I was like, "Good. Give me your driver's license. You're getting a ticket." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're getting a ticket for running the red light." So I was like, "No, we don't play that over here, man." I'm like,
"Yeah, no, that's wow." So your opinion, to repeat the phrase, because I've never heard this phrase before, you're for removing the thin blue line. The thin blue line is this. Is that a popular opinion amongst cops?
No. Matter of fact, it's very much looked down upon that if you don't stand up for that, like especially in some of the bigger departments, you may find that you can't get backup when you need it.
Okay.
Like they'll just be like, "Oh, I didn't hear it come over the radio," or a whole bunch of other things. They may actively look to try and get you on stuff. Which the part of the reason for that is obviously, cops aren't accepted in normal society. So I kind of last time I had a conversation about this, which was with another comedian, Eric Frost, as a matter of fact. Me and him have had some really cool discussions about all kind of things because we can just sit there and talk about stuff. But I tried to explain to him, I said, just think about it this way. I said, this is how this all kind of gets created. I said, think about it, like cops aren't accepted in normal society. Like, if they can't wear their T-shirt saying, "Hey, I'm a cop," and go hang out at, Burger King or the regular bar, because people get nervous. And two, they're looking for you to do anything wrong so they can, call your boss and tattletale on you. So we've literally secluded them into this little corner where the only people that are comfortable being around them and the only people that they're comfortable being around are their own people and their families of those people. And so now you've literally set them up where if they do tell on their family, now their blue family, they've been, excommunicated. And now you're on an island to yourself. So, not saying that excuses it, but that's part of it also.
It's part of the reason. It's like, this is their, then I understand what you're saying. It makes sense. It's like, well, these are my community of people. I'm just going to go with the common thought here because I don't want to be excluded from these people. Like, I'll have nobody left. So it kind of makes sense that everyone just kind of like goes together on that. Yeah. But you're right. I guess that doesn't excuse that behavior. You were a cop, you said. When were you a cop?
So I was military police for 5 years, and then I was Nevada State Police. Nevada doesn't have a highway patrol. They have state police. So it's literally like a local cop that covers the entire state.
Okay.
And I did that that was 2010 to early 2013.
Okay. So one of my questions for you is going to be, I know you were saying that you get looked at a certain way for being Southern. I'm wondering, from the past few years, but you haven't been a cop recently. So I guess this doesn't apply. But my other question was going to be, do you ever get looked at in your experience when you were a cop, did you get criticized or judged as a certain way for being a cop? But I guess that was before a lot of the, modern politics going on with division.
No, you still have because Northern Nevada has a lot of reservations. So like Native American reservations, and you have to cover those too. So, but even when you're dealing with regular people, just your friends in the area, of course, like when you tell people because what's the first thing usually most people ask adults? What do you do? So, if I was, where I lived at in Reno at the time, like I could walk to a bar and be, without any issues, and walk over to a bar and, hang out. And, people would be like, "Oh, what do you do?" I had no problem telling people, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm state police." And you could usually tell real quick whether they're going to be one of those that like freaks out about it or, for the most part, I would tell them, I'm like, "Look, if you don't do anything stupid or wrong, like we're friends, let's, just talk." So like we can still have a beer and sit there and watch TV. You're fine. So
did you ever have any friends that were weird about like smoking marijuana and stuff around you because you're a cop or you were a cop?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like that was the other thing. I always told my friends, I'm like, don't put me in a position where I have to do something about it. Like I had one friend that I grew up with, like even growing up, that was always mine. Is like, hey, don't do anything around me that's going to make me do something about it later. I had a friend.
This is interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. When you were a cop, when you were off duty, if you were to see something like that, would you be allowed to intervene when you're off duty?
Yeah. So as long as I haven't been drinking, is essentially like as long as you're not under the influence of something, then you had a duty to act actually.
Okay, so that was actually part of the training that they would specifically tell you to make sure you're pretty much always on the clock if you see something.
Yeah, I mean, you could, or you would have to call it in. Like for instance, if I went to the bar and I had a couple beers or some whiskey or something, if I saw something that normally you'd arrest somebody for, you call it in and you're like,
yeah,
hey,
you can't act when you're under the influence because some sticky could happen. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I have a few more questions before we end the podcast because we're getting closer to the hour mark. So I usually stop in about an hour. Okay, so before it ends, I do want to ask you, you said you grew up on a ranch and did rodeo. Can you just tell me a little bit about that experience? Because I've never in my life met somebody who grew up on a ranch and did rodeo. So that's just interesting. So what was that like?
So growing up on a ranch, you don't get days off because the animals got to be fed. So we luckily we had quite a lot of family around us. So we kind of sectioned off the ranch of hey, this is your area. You're going to take care of it. And there were lighter months. So because you got to rotate the cattle so they all get grass and the horses and stuff like that. And plus my mom ran a humane society. So we had those animals too. So, and you got to go feed them. So it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. So
what kind of animals did you have?
Well, we had horses, chickens, pigs, of course, cattle. And then with my mom's humane society, we had a little bit of everything. We had snakes at one point, goats, a jackass, a bunch of cats, dogs. So,
what's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten? Because you said you had snakes on there. Have you ever eaten snake meat or anything like that?
Yeah, but that wasn't with that. So, no, that's through travels. I think the weirdest thing I ever ate was camel.
You ate camel?
Yeah.
Where did you do that?
In Iraq. Yeah.
And how did you like it?
It's greasy as shit. Yeah. But I mean, it was tolerable. You could eat it and stomach it, and you're fine. So
I don't think I've eaten I had a friend who was what did I eat? I did eat something weird. It was a rabbit. I think I ate rabbit once because I had a friend who was from Mexico, and apparently that was in their culture they ate rabbit. So I think I ate a little bit of rabbit meat once. I don't remember what it tastes like. I know they eat cow's tongue also. There's cow's tongue tacos, another Mexican tradition.
If you go to Africa, they have monkey brains that you can.
That's insane to me. I feel. I mean, that's a complex thing too. It's funny that we prioritize certain animals over the others. It's interesting, but for some reason, I feel like monkey is too close to human for me to do that.
Yeah, that was the same thing I said. I was like, no. Same thing when I was in Korea. They were still raising. I can't remember the type of dog, but there is a type of dog that they raise like cattle. But it's not like any dog. You're not going to find a German Shepherd. It's a specific type of dog that they raise like that.
Did you
for meat?
When you were on the ranch, did you ever at times build a relationship with animals and then kind of feel guilty about if you had to kill them?
Never felt guilty about it. No. But yeah, you build relationships with them. You get to know the animals. Which cow is slightly more insane than the other ones.
I think I would struggle with that because I am a meat eater. I don't have trouble eating meat, but I also am an animal lover, and I love my cats so much. I would never eat my cats. So I can't, I think for me, I would personally struggle. I would have a hard time getting to know the animals, and unless it's a different, because you come from a completely different perspective, unless it's just kind of a different.
Yeah. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
You know that from the beginning, the same thing. And I think that might be another, where you start talking. I was trying to think of the word, but it's where females tend to have a lot more empathy than males do.
Yeah.
So that's the reason more females tend to go towards the medical field and teaching and things like that. But the same thing, like, even though my sisters grew up the same way, like, they weren't good at that part of it, or, like, whenever we had to take a young bull and make him a steer. Yeah. They couldn't do that. They were like, no, it hurts.
I always wonder about that. Like, if I had to hunt or kill an animal, I think, and this is interesting because it's about survival. If I was in a situation where, like, I had my child. I don't have a kid, but I'm saying if I had a kid and, for whatever reason, we were starving and the only thing we could do is hunt, like, I would have no issues, like, just choking something. Like, I would just, like, if it came to that, if it came to, like, my kid's gonna die, I don't think I would feel any, like, pain or issues, like, killing an animal, but just, like, everyday life, you know what I mean? Like, that's obviously not the situation. It would, I guess, because you said, like, women tend to have, like, more of an empathetic gene, I guess you could say. It would be rough for me, I think, like steak. I love steak. I love red meat. I also think cows are cute. Like, so, like, it's just, it would be hard for me.
Oh no, animals are cute. I love them to death. Like, whether it's a deer, I think the only animal I think looks, that I never had any problem killing are snakes and gators. No.
Oh, gators. Yeah, no, gators. I would want to kill one because they're so fucking, like, vicious. Chickens, I think I might be able to be okay with killing a chicken because, like, they don't like, and again, I've never worked on a farm or a ranch or anything, so I don't know the personalities of chickens, but from what I've seen, like, they seem very like out of it. Like, like, they don't seem like they have a brain sometimes to me, but I could be totally wrong about that. I don't know.
Yeah. And roosters are assholes. Yeah. So you never have it. Like, literally, you're like, you get to take out what the bully at school did to you on the rooster. It's like,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the gators and stuff like that, I wouldn't have an issue with that. And, like, chickens, fish seem so numb to me. They don't seem like they have a personality. But, like, when you get more to the mammals, like the pigs and the cows and stuff, I think that would be harder for me. But again, I'm a hypocrite because I love steaks. So.
Pigs are really smart. So, yeah, we had one that, like, he could get out of his pen. Like, he was a jailbreak artist. We were like, what the? Okay, sure. So yeah.
I think that would be a rough one for me. Maybe possibly I could cut certain animals out of my diet, maybe, but I don't think I'm ready for that yet. But I would think about it. Okay, so I have two more questions for you before we end the podcast. Next question is: you said you were a firearms instructor.
Still am.
I was going to ask you if you still are. So you still are a firearms instructor.
Yeah.
And is that, like, is it specifically for hunting or is it for anything?
No, most of what I teach now is pistol. So, like, self-defense type stuff. Every now and again, I get to teach offensive shooting.
Yeah.
But that's super rare. And that's a very small percentage of the population that I'll even teach that to.
It's funny, like, I come from a pretty liberal family. So me and my dad have had, like, conversations about whether you should own a gun. My dad, like, he doesn't, he's not so much, like, supporting that, like, I should have a gun. Like, you know what I mean? For example. And I've told him before, like, my perspective was to him that I considered, for the first time in my life, I considered actually getting a gun because a couple of years ago, I lived in my own apartment by myself as a single woman, and someone tried to break in my apartment. And the fear, that was the first time in my ever life where I actually thought I was going to die. Like, I was like, someone's trying to get in my apartment. I have no plan. It's 3:00 in the morning. I live all alone. I was like, holy shit, I'm dead. I'm going to be dead. Thankfully, it was a drunk neighbor who was just going in the wrong house. So it was not a serious thing, but I didn't know that. You know what I mean? I'm just 3:00 in the morning. I'm by myself and, like, and he was drunk. So he wasn't even like he was just trying to unlock it. He was banging at the door. Cause I think probably he was in a fight with his fiance or something like that. And he thought that was his house and he was trying to like get her or whatever.
Yeah.
And which still could have been dangerous. So by the way, if he was like shit-faced drunk, he could have tried to hit me or something. If he hits his wife, you never know what that could have turned into. But anyways,
like the deputy down in Dallas, think that somebody broke in.
Yeah. So exactly. But anyways, after that whole incident, I was so afraid to sleep alone. And I told my dad, I was like, I actually thought of getting a gun. And his argument was like, he's like, you don't know how to use a gun. The guy would probably take the gun from you and shoot you. Like, that's what my dad told me. He could be right. I ended up settling for mace. Like, you know what I mean? But no, I like, growing up from a liberal family, I always thought like, what's the point of having a gun? But that was, like I said, the first time in my life that I was like, I might consider getting one. I think I'm still leaning towards not getting one though, because I have mental health issues and I don't, maybe someone with mental health issues maybe shouldn't have a gun, because not that I would go shooting other people. I might shoot myself. So, for me personally, it might not be the best thing, but I totally support and see valid reasons for having a gun for self-defense reasons, especially as a single female,
Yeah. And that's honestly a lot of the home defense people that I've taught are single females living alone, or even if they have a roommate, something like that. But it's a lot of single females. And what I always tell them is obviously everybody's experience is a little bit different. But me personally, I've only ever had to pull my pistol in my regular civilian life twice. So one time was a guy that was breaking in while I'm sitting on my couch. So he came through the door to me pointing the pistol at the door. So
one thing that also stopped me from getting a gun in New Jersey was that in the laws of New Jersey, they're kind of strict. Like, so if somebody broke in and then I shot them, I would have to be able to prove in court that they were actually trying to harm me.
Yep.
Or else I would go to jail. So that was like another thing. I was like, this is so complicated that it's not worth it for me. I'm just going to stick with mace. Like, because how could I prove that before it's too late? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like I understand somebody like kind of like the drunk situation, right? So somebody can come in and they could just be drunk and then I shoot and kill an innocent person. That makes sense to me. But like, at what point can you pull the trigger? Like, how do I determine if this person's going to attack me or not? You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
and that's where some of the training comes in. And also that's pretty common. So a lot of people don't know that even if it's a justified shooting, so like, even if he comes in, has a knife in hand and a gun in the other one, and you pull the trigger, you're still going to jail for that night because you've still killed somebody.
That's what I mean. It's like so complicated. Like, does he have to like have the knife in me, like for me to pull the trigger? Like when can you?
No, that's what I'm saying is even if it's completely justified, like 100%, you're not going to be found guilty. You're still going to go to jail because you killed somebody. Now, it may just be for one night and your attorney can get you off, and say, hey, it's justified. But when the cops show up, this is the other thing I tell people, cops show up, shut your damn mouth. Tell them I want my attorney and I'm not telling you anything.
What about shooting somebody like in the foot or something? How would like is there like do they ever teach you that? Like
nope.
No.
The only reason that you pull the trigger is to get rid of something. So is to stop them for what they're doing. Because basically, and here's where you run into the issue is you're going to go in front of a jury. If that defense attorney is really good, they can now say that, oh, you had time to aim. And you knew that they weren't as much of a threat as you're trying to say they are because you only shot them in the leg. But now the other side goes to it is now they could possibly sue you.
Because now they're alive and have a voice and then come up with a story. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So not that I would ever justify anybody being killed, but that's the whole purpose of the self-defense with a firearm is to stop that attacker completely. So, and we always teach people is that you don't point your firearm at anything you don't intend to destroy.
Wow, that's pretty intense. Wow.
Yeah. And that's the reason we use that word. That's right out of an instructor's guide. destroy. So because you want to end it. So
that makes sense. Wow. That's like, there's like, I have a lot of my brain just went off into like other directions about that one. Like, maybe I'll have you on a second podcast, because this was definitely an interesting conversation, but just to like tease the listeners, like lately I've been thinking about like the ethics of, killing criminal, what is it called? Like when you get the electric chair, what do they call that?
Punishment.
Yeah. I've been thinking about like the ethics of that, like, cause it's interesting. We have like, there's a lot of controversy about like abortion and stuff like that. But then there's situations like that where it's a deeper conversation. We can talk about that for like another hour. So I'll probably save that one for a different time. But yeah, that stuff's really interesting to me. Okay, I have one more question to end the podcast. This is kind of a very intense transition, but I do like to ask this to all my listeners. At your current place and time right now, what is your meaning of life? Like, how do you define life for you? Or do you not have one, or are you not into that? Or how would you put that in words at this point in your life?
I look at, if you're looking at my meaning of life, is that, I look at it as everybody's purpose is to help another person along the way. And that's what I try to do. Whether it's, helping, the veterans, like get jobs, get off the street, or, helping them with their, PTSD issues, or helping other people. One of the things, that I'm known for in the comedy community is kind of being, somebody called me this earlier today and I laughed, is the bar show booker. So I've helped a ton of people get booked on shows that, like I'm not getting booked on that show, or maybe I've already done it, but I have that relationship with that producer to where if I put my name behind you, like with that particular producer, they're going to be like, okay, you're good to go. They're still going to ask for a video just to see what your comedy's like. Yeah. But if I say, hey, this person, these people, they're good to go, you can book them. To the extent, and this isn't bragging, this isn't to boost my ego. I could give a shit. I didn't get paid for any of it or get anything out of it. One producer reached out to me, I think it was last month, brand new producer. He's like, hey man, look, I'm going to do 7 slots. And that's all he does is produce. He's not a comic. He's like, can you help me get some people? I started a group chat and just started loading comics that I knew were good. And I'm like, here you go, man. All different types. I don't give a shit about race, color, creed, religion, none of that. I'm like, are you fucking funny? That's all I care about. And I just started loading them up. And finally he had to text me like outside the group chat because he has my number. And he's like, stop, I'm good for now. And I was like, okay. And I think we ended up something like 30 comics is what I sent him.
You helped me. You are a good helper. You helped me with the female comic. Like, I put out a post on my Instagram saying like, I never get women on my podcast because like there's so many male comedians. There's so many male musicians. I get so many men interested in the podcast, but never any woman. And you sent me over. I had like a whole stream of women reach out to me because of you. Yeah. So you definitely are like a good helper. I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as somebody's, at least a halfway decent person, and and whatever you're asking for, if they're good at that, I can overlook some of the other issues. Like I know a ton of really funny comics that if you sat down and talked with them, you would want to smack them in the fucking face. But that's not what you're not looking for a buddy. You're looking for somebody to make your crowd laugh.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now, obviously, there's limits to everything. And there's some comics that are too much of an asshole that I'm like, I'll never help you. So, but for the most part, if I see an opportunity and I think somebody can fill that, I'll definitely help people out. So, and by all means, that does not mean you need to reach out to me and say that you're available for shit. So let me clarify that. So,
no. All right. No, that's a great way to end the podcast. I really like that definition of like the meaning of life for you is to help people out when you can. I noticed a couple of my podcast guests have said not exactly in those words, but like similar things that they feel their mission is to be an inspiration to other people in a positive way and that type of thing. So I like hearing everybody's perspective on that. But anyways, we're going to end the podcast now. So for the listeners, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did. Again, this is episode number 78, Pranzata Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment on anything we talked about in the conversation. If anything piqued your interest, if you agreed with us, disagreed with us on something, I'd be interested to hear your perspective. Let them know if they want to find you. I will include like a link to your stuff below, your Instagram probably, because that's what I use most often. And let them know if there's any like other things you want them to know about, like shows or anything like that.
Yeah. When do you know when this is coming out?
I usually put these out pretty quickly, so it'll be up within the next 2 to 3 days. It might even be out tomorrow, honestly. Okay.
So it's at James Mack Comedy on all the social media except for Twitter. I get myself in trouble on Twitter. Because I am one of those people that will argue back and forth with people on social media. So
he's a great, speaking of helpers too, he's also a great commenter on my YouTube. Like he always gives his input on my YouTube, which I appreciate. And again, for the listeners, if you don't like something I said, don't feel embarrassed to like say that. Like I like to have healthy arguments. Like I like to have back and forth like conversations, so
I'm still waiting on your comment back from what I said about females in comedy.
Did I? I thought I responded. I saw that one, but I could have sworn I responded to that one.
You just liked it. I was like, okay.
I just liked it. You know what it is? Sometimes I get overwhelmed with like different tasks, so I don't always get to those. But I'll have to revisit that one. I thought I commented back to it.
But for the bigger stuff that's coming up right now, I'm trying to think. 4/7 and 4/8. There's a new comedy club down in Wildwood, New Jersey. I'm going to be headlining that, and that's going to be a lot of fun because it's still new. So get to go into a brand new audience. And this is my first full weekend headlining a club, so that'll be exciting. I'm hoping that we can sell those out. 4/14. I will be at Stand Up New York to finally get past there. So please come out. It'll be a fun show. It's a pro show. It's not an audition show.
That's incredible that you made it there. That's like a really good club.
Yeah. And then April 26th, I am at the Apollo. So yeah, that Apollo in Harlem. Yeah, I know the white dude is at the Apollo. I sent them a video and they liked it. So they were like, hey, come out, do it.
That's that's awesome. All right. So that's it, guys. Yeah. Episode, I'll include his Instagram below. So if you guys liked, his stuff and you want to find him easily, you can just click below. But that's it, everybody. Episode 78. I hope you guys have a good day. Have a good night. Bye.